This video is sponsored by Launch Tabletop, a full-scale board game manufacturer with a print-on-demand prototyping service, Launch Lab. Hang on until the end of the video for more information and a discount code. It's that time of the year again where I do a top 100. So 3 years ago, I think it was, I did my top 100 games. The next year I did my top 100 mechanisms used in games. Then I did my top 100 filler games. But this year I'm doing my top 100 lessons that I've learned as a board game designer. Now, I've been working in the board game industry for the last 10 years or so. I'm a freelance board game designer. I have 8 games which have been published and more on the way. It's not my full-time job, but I do spend a fair amount of my week working on it in my free time with, you know, varying degrees of success. And I like to talk about the whole process on this channel with a particular focus on product design. So if you like what I do, please comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be making 10 videos, 10 at a time, and I have 100 cards here which I've written various different lessons that I've learnt about board game design and the board game industry over the last decade or so. So I'm going to be picking out 10 of them in each video and just talking briefly about them. So first on my pile here, first one of 10, is the industry is obsessed with innovation. You shouldn't be. Now, I think this is true more than ever right now. Having visited Essen Spiel in 2023, in October 2023, for the, gosh, how many times have I been? I don't know, 8 times, something like that. But I haven't been since 2019. And going back, actually, the real focus of the publishers is about trying to find things that are very different, very new, with a nice gimmick, something that's really going to catch the attention of the public. And actually, even when I'm showing them games and they're saying they think that the game is really good, some of the games people are very excited about, and then the feedback comes later. Although we think it's an excellent game and we really enjoy playing it, they've even said they love it, they don't want to make it because they're not sure that it's going to stand out enough against the competition. And this is the point where I think the industry has become so sort of overwhelmed with games that there's almost a kind of desperation amongst the publishers and distributors, in so much as they need to find something absolutely brand new. And that's hard when there's thousands of games coming out each year. And if you're prioritizing that over quality, then I'm not sure that that's the right way to go. But I understand the publishers need to stay afloat. They need to get recognized. They need to get their games spotted. I don't think you need to worry about it, right? I don't think that's our problem. Our craft is in creating something that is good, isn't it? Our craft is creating something that is of quality. And yes, you know, that's about product design, and part of product design is finding things that that stand out. But I'm not convinced that that shock tactic of innovation at all costs is actually the way. I think what you're really looking for is finding new ways to do old things, right? Extraordinary ways to do things that are pretty ordinary and that have been done well in the past. There's a reason that we see the same products in the toy industry year after year, and that these things go in cycles, okay? The familiar actually has less of a barrier to the public than anything else. The things that the public really want to buy is the stuff that they understand that doesn't have too big a barrier to entry. And so if you go too far off the beaten path, I think you can do yourself a disservice. So I understand where this is coming from. However, the big successes of the last, I don't know, 5 years haven't been massively innovative games. If you think about things like Wingspan, I mean, that's not particularly innovative, it's just a really good, well-rounded product. If you think about, I'm looking at my shelves behind the camera over there, Isle of Cats, okay? There's no great innovation there, it's just a really good game. The Quacks of Quedlinburg I've got on my shelf next to it. Really big hit, nothing hugely innovative. Everdell's up there, nothing massively innovative in that. These are just really well-rounded, lovely, well-produced products, okay? And I think that's where we should be focusing our attention. And yeah, of course, there's got to be something new in there, but it doesn't have to be something shocking and revelatory. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a panic going on in the industry, with everyone reaching out for these crazy new wacky gimmicks. Expect over the next 2 years. Okay, and I say that because the production time from pitching to production is about two or 3 years. Expect over the next 2 to 3 years to see a lot of wacky games. That's my gut feeling on the basis of conversations with publishers over the last few months. So next up is related, isn't it? Go to conventions. I was talking about going to Essen Spiel there, and the fact that I go to Essen Spiel every year, outside of the pandemic years. I've been going every year, and it has been the most valuable thing I could possibly do as a game designer. I've learned so much from going to conventions, and you should do everything you can to try and do that as well. Okay, and I know it's costly and I know it's out of reach for some people, but if at all possible, that's where you're going to learn the most. You can arrange meetings in advance with publishers. If you're unable to do that, you can just rock up at the stand and just ask them, could I have a chat with the person who's, who deals with pitches from designers, and they'll talk to you, even if they're not willing to sit down and look at your game at that point. You can take business cards, you can speak to other designers, you can get involved in events, you can see all the things that are going on in the industry. You'll learn so much. So the conventions that I frequently go to are UK Games Expo and Essen Spiel. Essen Spiel being by some magnitude, by maybe, I don't know, it's probably, what is it, 6 times, maybe more, 10 times bigger than UK Games Expo in terms of its sheer scale. I don't know exactly how big. But UK Games Expo is much more condensed and much more manageable, right? There are loads of great conventions in America that I hear about, but I've never been able to go to because of that cost issue and the time issue. I believe the convention in Cannes in France is very, very good, so I'm told, for game designers. I also have frequently gone to the London Toy Fair, which is very toy industry focused, but you get a real different feel about product design from immersing yourself in the world of toys and mass market rather than the hobby market. I've been to Nuremberg Toy Fair as well, which is several degrees of magnitude bigger than Essen again, but that's because it's largely toys, not games. And it's a little bit more formal. Like I don't think you can easily get meetings just on the fly. You can't just turn up at a booth and find a meeting. You've got to have stuff arranged in advance for Nuremberg. And it's not as much fun because you can't buy games, right? And you can barely play games. So Essen Spiel is the place to go, or I'm sure some of those American conventions, and I'm quite certain there are other very, very good conventions all around the world that I just don't know about. But go to conventions if at all possible. Okay, number 3, playtest other designers' prototypes. Yeah, you've got to help other people out, right? They're playtesting your prototypes, you playtest theirs, and you hone your skills here. Playing other people's prototypes will remind you of the lessons that you learned years ago, or maybe you didn't, but you watched someone else learn those lessons, and so it helps to lift you up a little bit as well. If you play their prototypes, they're going to play yours. So there's something in it for you, right? There's something in it for you and something in it for them by playing other people's prototypes. Sometimes these things can develop into great working relationships where you can go on and you can co-design and things like that. Often they don't. Sometimes their game is rubbish, but then you can really give back with your knowledge, and you can teach them in the kind. You're not going to say to them, "This is rubbish." Okay, I hope you're not. You're going to give them the benefit of your wisdom and your experience. Next up, you are not an aspiring game designer. Lose the word aspiring, right? You're a game designer. It's that thing about you are what you say you are, right? It's your identity that matters. If you go into, let's say you're trying to stop smoking and somebody offers you a cigarette and you say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm trying to quit." Okay, are you more likely to quit if you do that, or are you more likely to quit if you say, "I'm not a smoker, I'm a non-smoker"? Right? It's about your identity. You need to define yourself, and then once you've done that, you can start living that sort of identity, living that world. So if you say, "I am a game designer," and you do the things that a game designer does, you're a game designer, right? Okay, you're not trying to be a game designer, you're not hoping to be a game designer, You are a game designer and it's going to happen. And nobody gets to define what a game designer is anyway. Okay, you define a game and nobody ever sees it, or you design a game just in your head. Fine, you're a game designer. Okay, nobody else gets to tell you you're not. You don't have to be published to be a game designer. You are not an aspiring game designer. You are a game designer. Dice are not the answer. Now this was, I think, probably the first video I made specifically on board game design was called Dice are not the answer. Got a lot of views, and it got a bit of controversy, frankly, in the comments. People weren't entirely happy with my video. And I think it's because they took it as me railing against randomness in board games. And that wasn't really the intention. It may have come across like that. That wasn't the intention. My issue is that I see a lot of new designs, new prototypes from people who haven't designed games before, and they're fixing all sorts of problems in their design by the roll of a dice or the random card draw from the deck. And actually, it doesn't fix anything. It's an artificial fix. It doesn't actually solve the problem. All it does is layers a layer of randomness on top of the problems that were already in the game. And if they're trying to create a big strategy game and now they're sticking dice rolls in there, it can completely derail any strategy in the game. You know, the difference between rolling a 6 and rolling a 1 if you're rolling for movement, or if you're rolling for combat, or drawing a card from the deck, which is extremely powerful and beneficial, compared to drawing a card from that same deck, which is extremely punishing. One could win you the game, the other could lose it for you. What's the point in playing? Okay, what's the point in playing a strategic game if the strategy doesn't matter? And so when I see people using this to fix it, I always think actually the real challenge is not doing that. Put the dice away. Get rid of that random card draw. Find another solution. And you're going to learn stuff. You're going to learn new mechanisms, new ways of approaching things. And that doesn't mean you can't use dice or you can't use a card draw. Okay, of course you can. Okay, but not as an artificial fix. Don't use it when you're stuck. Okay, if you're using it, it should be deliberate in order to give the game a bit of, I don't know, excitement or push your luck, or to generate the feel and the emotion that you're aiming for. Not as a sticky plaster bandage, patch it up, you know, just kind of fix it. You know, that's not the solution, right? So dice are not the answer. If you're a newcomer to game design, I would leave dice and random card draws for much later, once you've got a bit of game design sort of experience under your belt, and then you can use it carefully, tentatively. It's a bit like cooks putting a load of garlic in every meal that they make in order just to disguise the fact that the thing's not tasting very nice. Okay? Hold back on the garlic, right? You can use the garlic when you know what you're doing. Publishers are warm and friendly. Now, people don't seem to realise this. Publishers are gamers, right? The vast majority of them are gamers. And I meet publishers. I've met hundreds of publishers over the years. I met 30 publishers at Essen Spiel last month, and multiple individuals in each of these meetings. So, you know, technically I probably met 60 publishers at that particular meeting, 60 individuals. All of them, pretty much, almost all of them, are lovely. Really nice, warm, friendly people, excited about games, excited to talk to you. They are not scary. They're not usually rude. I'm going to probably be coming on to this point at some point in my 100. I don't know when, because I'm doing a random card draw here, which I promise you is not an artificial fix. In my case, it's very deliberate. Publishers are warm and friendly. Don't get the wrong idea about them. Join an online community. So joining an online community has a real benefit because it's a great place to ask questions and get a wide range of different perspectives from all over the world, from all different levels of experience. So I really recommend the Facebook group, the Board Game Design Lab community. I found it really, really good. And in fact, it's somewhere where I often send people if they email me and ask me a question that I can't answer or that I just don't have time to answer. Join that Facebook Design Lab community. Okay, really, really good. But there's loads of other online communities, I'm sure on Discord, on the Board Game Geek website, and people have their own communities that they've built up too. It's a great way of getting into online playtesting as well. I don't do this a lot, but I know that some of those communities will set up virtual playtesting groups where you can get on playing tabletop simulator mods and things like that. Join an online community, ask questions, chat, learn, read what other people are asking and learn from it. Really, really valuable. Your game is never finished. I remember once going to a game designer meetup, and it was probably the first time I'd ever gone to a game designer meetup where there were published designers there, right? And I was a bit in awe, really. I felt a bit like, oh, I knew some of these names, I knew their games. It was quite exciting to be invited. It felt like a huge honor, you know, that somebody who had invited me along had thought that my games were good enough to be playtested in this sort of forum. And I remember saying, okay, I've got 2 games which are finished, you know, and they laughed at me. They actually laughed. They said, okay, right, you're new, because your game is never finished. Okay, your game is never finished. I've published games which have now, you know, they've gone out of print. The rights have reverted back to me, and if I was to pitch those games to a new publisher, then I would be making alterations, right? They've been published, they've been out there, they've been sold in their thousands, and yet they're still not finished. People often say your game is not finished until the moment, you know, you get that published copy, that printed copy in your hand. But I would say even then, it's not finished. It can go through future iterations. So don't fool yourself. There's always changes you can make. There's always improvements you can make. Your game needs progression. It's another lesson that I learned early, and this is something which is very specific to the mechanisms of game design. So this is quite focused on me. It's kind of a reminder for me, really. There's a lot of games out there with no progression, where you just do the same thing from one round to the next, and actually what you did in the previous round has no impact on the next round. And I'm thinking of things like card games, trick-taking games, things like that. I've made some myself, right, with no progression between rounds beyond the fact that you're accumulating points. Ideally, you want the things that you did in a previous round should matter in the next round. I think that's really important. It gives a real sense of achievement as you and pace and development as you go through the game. Even in some small way, even if you're making a simple card game in small way, it's great if something can carry through from one round to the next. Final card for this first 10, don't give away all your free designer copies. Okay, so this point was initially made for me when I had my first game published. Okay, I'd got a box of copies of Big Bazaar that had arrived in the post. I was really excited about it, and I started giving them out to friends and family. And then I remember going for dinner with some friends of mine who are novelists, authors. And I was talking to them about this and how excited I was, and we were talking about the parallels between publishing a book and publishing a game, and how, you know, the arrangements with publishers are similar, and the royalties and all this stuff. And the idea of free complimentary copies of your game came up, and the author said to me, don't give them all away. Keep them, keep a load of them. You never know when you're going to need them. And if you've given them all away, you're going to regret it. You need to have a little stash of them stashed away somewhere, and don't let that dwindle down to 0. You want to have a bunch of these things for posterity. Okay, and if you need to give more away, then okay, maybe you want to get hold of some more, but there ought to be a little stash of them that actually are yours for emergencies, right? When you really need them, when the thing's properly out of print and you can't get hold of it anymore. Well, I've still got a few copies to hand. Okay, so don't give away all your free designer copies. You're going to want them later. So that is the end of my first 10 in this 100 lessons I've learned about board game design over the last decade. So thanks very much for watching, and please make sure you come back. Did you know Launch Lab uses production methods which enable print-on-demand games to look as good as mass-produced games? If you'd like to produce a small print run of your prototype game, log on to launchtabletop.com and use the code ADAMINWales for a 20% discount.